Hi guys, if you open the Upwork, you can see a lot of different projects on sale, like this one. This guy is selling his loan payments calculator for $300. Also, if you ever needed to calculate your loan payment, you could see a lot of different examples of these calculators in the internet. So I've decided that it could be a great small project to try something new like React. As an example, I'm going to use the amortization calculator from Credit Karma. So we will be able to input the loan amount, the interest rate, and the number of years. Then we will press the calculate button and see how much is going to be our monthly principal and interest payment. Also, I think it is really important to add information about the amortization schedule, so we could see how much money and how much will be the interest paid in each of our payment. As always, let me show you what you will need to complete this project. First of all, it is the Node.js platform, so I would suggest you to download the 16th version. I'm also going to develop the project in the Visual Studio Code, so you can open it by code.visualstudio.com and download it for whatever operating system you have. And finally, in the Visual Studio Code I do have 7 extensions installed, but I think that ES7 snippets is the only one that you need. Alright, this is it for the introduction and requirements, so let's get started our project. First, we need to create our project, and I'm going to use the TypeScript. So if you search in the internet like create a React with the TypeScript, you will see this command that I'm going to copy. We go to the Visual Studio Code and just enter it in the terminal, and instead of naming it like my app, I'm going to use the name, I don't know, loancalc, and press enter. When the command is completed, you will see the newly created folder on the left. Next, let's open this folder, just cd loancalc, and we see that we are in the folder. And now I'd like to start this project. npm run start, and it's starting. Finally, you will see that the project is running on the localhost 3000, and this is our index page. Let's get back to the Visual Studio Code, and if you open the app.ts6, you can see that this file actually contains this code that we've just seen. So we can easily remove it, we're not interested in that. We don't need these lines as well. If we save it and go back to the browser, we can see the empty page. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'd like to add a new component. So we can click new file, and let's say it will be loancalculator.ts6. Here, since I have the extension installed with the snippets, I can type RFC, press tab, and I have the boilerplate for my React component. Let's add some basic information like loan calculator and include this component into the app component. For doing that, we need to import loan calculator. Here we go, from the loan calculator file, and then I need to mention it into my app component. So we save the file, go to the browser, and see this message, which means that now we can continue working in this component file. Since we're going to use the Credit Karma calculator as an example, we're going to have a form with 3 divs for each of the row, and in this div, this text is going to be the label, and this one is going to be the input. Let's get back to the Visual Studio Code and start with the HTML markup. First of all, I'm going to add the class name for this div. Let's say this will be loan calculator container. We're going to use the class names to apply the styles. Next, I need a form, so we'll type the form. As I told you, we're going to have divs for each of our rows. So let's say that the class name is going to be the form item. Alright. In these divs, I'm going to have label. Let's say this one is loan amount, and for the label, for the input, let's add another div. Let's say this is going to be form input. Close this one, and in this div, this will be input with the type number. We are not going to allow to type any characters besides digits. Then it should be name loan amount, placeholder, which means that we will display 0 as a first character in this one. And I think this is it. Alright, I think this is enough for the beginning. So let's copy it, paste to the bottom and continue with the rest of the inputs. So this one is going to be the interest rate. Let's rename it as well, like this. And the long term in years, and again long term. Since we have labels and the name of our inputs, we can actually add that this one is for loan amount, this label is for interest rate, and this one is for long term. Okay, finally we need a button. So again, let's add a div with the class name, let's say form action, since we're going to apply a little bit different styles to this specific div. Also, it is going to be the input with the type submit, and value, this is the text of our button, let's say calculate, and the class name as calculate button. Close the tag, save it, it compiles successfully, so it should work. Let's go back to the browser, and it looks okay, we have all of the elements on the page. So now it's time to add some styles. If you open the app.tsx component, you can see that it has the app CSS file, and what we'll do here is we just import them. So let's do the same for the loan calculator.css. Alright, and we don't need React. So let's import loan calculator.css like we do in the app tsx. And here is a mistake that I forgot to add this one. Yes, now it works. I don't want to bother you guys with typing all of the styles and class names, so let me just copy paste them and show you how it works. On the left you can see a list of styles, and on the right you can see how this page looks with all of the styles applied. But let's say I'm going to comment this one and save, and now you see that the font size is different, the width is different, and yeah, I think the text align left is the basic one. So let's get it back. But what if we comment this one? You can see that without these styles, the inputs and the labels goes one by one. So what it does is it applies the display flex, and then it applies align items and justify content just to make the alignment works correctly. It also adds a line between the rows and some padding. So if we undo and save it, you can see that these lines and this alignment is coming from these styles. As a form action, I think it's clear that this is exactly for the text alignment of our button. If we comment it, yeah, it's on the left. Let's put it back. Next we have calculate button styles. So if we comment them, you can see that this button is pretty basic. But if we put it back and hover over it, you can see this interesting animation. Finally, the input styles. Again, let's comment them, save, and you see that Actually, these styles are about the width, the font size, the margin and border radius. There is also the height for them, for each of them, not only for the input text, but also for the input button. And this is it. So let's put them back, save. Yes, and now the form looks way better. I have also added just two styles for the amortization schedule table, but since we don't have it now, I don't think that it makes sense to take a look at them, but again, they are pretty basic. Now we have the HTML markup, so let's continue working on the actual implementation. And for doing that, I'm going to use the loanjs package that you can find at the npm IO. You can see that this package is actually for JavaScript, and we are using the TypeScript. Actually, this is not a big deal, and I'll show you how you can include it into your project. But before doing that, let's see how this package actually works. And my favorite way to test it is to use the stackblitz.com. So we can open the blank project for the Node.js. Here in the terminal, we need to type npm install loanjs. Alright, it's installing. Next, let's copy this code, copy it, paste here, and let's see what do we have in the loan object. Let's type node.index.js. Okay, we forgot to save the file. Run it once again, and here is our object. So we're going to have the array of installments. This is actually our payment schedule, and this is the summary of our loan. Now let's get back to our application and install loanjs package as a dependency. So we open the Visual Studio Code. Let's stop this one and npm install loanjs. Now let's wait until it's installed. Now when the package is installed, let's get back to the loan calculator component. And here, first of all, we need to import loanjs from loanjs, like this. As you can see, there is no package available because this is the JavaScript package and we're using the TypeScript. So in order to fix it, we need to create a docs.d.ts file in the root of our folder. Here we need to type declare module loanjs. Alright, it means that we are notifying our application that we actually know that this package exists and we are responsible for it. And finally, to make this file a part of our application, we need to open the tsconfig.json. We need to find the include part here and just paste the name of it in the array of the files and folders that are included during the compilation process. Okay, so if we go back to the loan calculator, now we can see that the error is gone and we can continue working on our application. First of all, I want to make sure that this package actually works. So let's start with, let's start with our form. Here in the form we have on submit, and we need to type a function that is going to be responsible for handling the submit event. So let's name it handle submit. We're going to add them const handle submit. This is going to be a function that accepts the event. Here we go. Next, I want to prevent default of this event. Save it. And after a user clicks on the submit, let's call another function. Let's say it is going to be the calculate function. We will pass the loan amount, the number of years. So let's say it will be 30 years, and the interest rate, let it be 4%. So this is how our submit function going to look like. Next, let's add the calculate function. Again, we can paste const calculate. So First is the amount, so it is going to be the number. Next is years, again the number, and rate. Let's also say that this is the number. Alright, as we saw at StackBlitz, we're going to use the new loanjs.loan. So let's just copy it and paste into our application. So we get back here and we paste it. And instead of using the amount, I'm going to use the amount parameter. Next, since this function requires the number of months, so let's say we're going to have years multiplied by 12, and finally the rate. And this is actually it. Let's start the application and see how it works. npm run start. So it's running now. Actually, the values that we have right now doesn't really matter. So what we do is we can just click on the calculate button and we see this object. So this is the object that the loanjs package returns. Here we have the amount, capital sum, the summary of interest that we're going to pay, and the list of payments that we will pay during this loan. During these 30 years. Next, I'm going to display this table of the payments. So first of all, I'm going to add import useState function from React. So since we are going to display the information on the page, we want to make it a part of our state. So each component in React usually has its own state if it's stateful. Let's say I want to have the list of installments as a part of my state. So in order to do it, I'm going to define an array, installments, and the second element of it is going to be the function that I'm going to use to set this state. Next we use setState and pass the default value. So what is happening here is that we are using the useState function of React. So this function accepts the default value, the initial state of it, which is going to be an empty array. So installments now is an empty array, and this is the variable where our state is going to be persisted. And setInstallments is the function that we're going to use to set this state. Now we can go back here, and instead of canceling log, I can just use setInstallments and pass loan.installments. Here is. So let's also console log installments now and see how it works. Open the console, calculate. Alright, so this information right now, we get it from our state. So the reason why I was doing that is because I'm going to add a table now. We need to go to the bottom. Under the form, we need to add the table with the head. It should be a row and header columns. So I think I'm going to add 5 of them. Let's call it month. This is going to be the index, payment amount, then interest paid, next principal paid, and finally remain. Here is. Next we need body, and here again I'm going to have the tr and table cells. So it should be 5 of them. Okay, let's see what do we have in the console. So if we click here, we're actually going to display an object that we have in this installments array. So first of all, when you'd like to iterate over objects, when you'd like to iterate over an array, you're going to use this variable like installments. Next, you need to use map. And since map has 2 arguments, one of them is the item, another one is the index, we can pass them both here. And now we need to return the information, the component or the markup that would like to display. And in our case, it is going to be a tr. So we need to just paste it here. And this is it. So now what is going to happen? When the React would like to display our page, it will see that we have the array of installments, and it will just display a single line for each of the elements that this array has. Next, we need to set key. This is a unique identifier just for the loop. And here we go. So for the months, we are going to use the int. This is our index. Next, let's use i.installment for the payment amount. Next, we have i.interest. I get this information from the list on the right. Next, we have i.capital. And finally, i.remain. So this is it. Let's see if it works. We click on the calculate, but unfortunately it doesn't work now. Let's see why it is so. I think the reason why it didn't work is because I hadn't reloaded the application. So if I refresh the page, you can see that now I have the header of this table, which I'm actually going to hide it. So why do we display it if we do not have any installments defined yet? So in order to hide it, what we can do is, again, we open the bracket, we have the installments. So let's say that we'd like to display the table only if our installments variable has some lang. So let's hide it here, format, all right, save. And now we do not display a table until we click the calculate button. So let's click it. And you see that we have this information. So it's 360 payments. Unfortunately, there are lots of zeros that I'd like to handle somehow. So in order to format the currency, let's define another function, amount format. And I'm going to accept the amount as a number. And here, let's say that we'd like to use this one with the number format. So we say that this is going to be the US local, and as a style, this is going to be the currency, and as the actual currency, it is going to be the USD. So then we say that we like to call the function format and just pass this amount. All right, let's add the call of these functions here. So we can type here, save it, and here we go. Yeah, right now the table is way more better than it was before. So whenever you need this beautiful function, you can just use it. Finally, what is left for our application is we'd like to pass the actual values from the inputs to our calculate function. So again, we need to use the state. So let's say that I'd like to have an object of values, and I'm going to use the set values function. This is your name, you can define it as you want. As you remember, the use state accepts the initial state. So here we can define that, let's say this object is going to have the loan amount key with the 0 value, loan term with the 0, and interest rate with 0. So just to show you how it actually works, let's change it to 1, 2, and 3. These are going to be the initial values for our inputs. So let's link them. In order to do it, we need to open our inputs. And for example, in the loan amount, we can use the value and say that as a value, we want to use values loan amount. Next, we can copy it and paste here and say that here we can use interest rate. All right. And finally, for the long term, we use long term. here we go. Let's see how it works. So we open the browser and we see that the values that we've just added here are displayed as default values for our inputs. Now we need to make it possible to change the values in the state when we change the value in the input. So in order to do it, again, we open the Visual Studio Code, and here we have the onChange property, where we need to pass a function that is going to be responsible for the change. So I'm going to use the handle input change function. Let's say that I'd like to have it the same for all of the inputs. And here's the point. Instead of defining a separate function for each of the input, I'd like to use the same function where I will get the name of the input and the value of it and just set this value to the state. So let me show you how it is going to work. First of all, we define this function const handle input change. So we accept the event as we did with the form. Here let's get the name and the value from the event.target and just see how they look like. Name and value. So we saved it. Let's open the browser, open the console, and as you can see, when I type 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth, you can see that we display the name of this input and the actual value. But since we do not update the state, this value that we have in the state is still displayed in the input. So this is why we need to update the state each time the input is changed. It can be easily done again since we are going to use the set values. Here we need to pass the object the whole object that we have in the values. The easiest way for it is we just use the destructor operator and the values. And next, let's say that for the name of this input, I'm going to pass this value. And this is it. So this function is going to be reused by all of the input, and all we need is just the name of it and the value. Let's see how it is going to work. Again, we open our browser. Yes, so now you can see that actually it works. Let me show it to you in detail. So if we type console log values, just to look at it, open the browser, and here we go. This is our current state right now. So what is left is we just need to pass these values to our calculate function. So I'm going to use values loan amount, loan amount here, values loan term here, and again values interest rate here. So let's format it and see how it is going to work. We refresh the page. Let's say we're going to get the 10,000 loan for 2 years with a 3% interest rate. We click calculate, and now you can see that it is actually working, since our remain is getting lower, and we're going to pay it in 23 months since we start the index from the 0, and this is how much interest paid in this payment. This is it. Let's see that it will actually work like we expect, with the Credit Karma. So I'm going to use some big values. Let's say we want $3 million for 6% and 45 years. Let's do the same for the right calculator. Interest rate is 6, number of years is 45. We click calculate here, and here we go. So the payment amount is the same, the interest paid is the same, principal paid the same, and remain is also the same. Finally, if we go to the bottom, we also have this long list of payments here. Unfortunately, I do not see the last payment, but it should be somewhere here. For whatever reason this node was not displaying, I don't know why, but yeah, all the values are completely the same. And this is actually it, guys. I think that I'd like to add some additional slider, or maybe to add some unit tests to this project, just to show you how it works with the React. So if you don't wanna lose these videos, you can subscribe to this channel. Let me know if you'd like me to add some charts or some bars and maybe this summary information. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.